All right, how is everyone doing today? Welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel. Okay, we've got a couple new features today. Um, Starting number 10, I believe. This is called Your Blind Side. And try to alert you to things that you might be missing, especially stuff that I encounter in my research. Um, in general, the channel is looking at things that you would benefit from, but you probably won't encounter because they've been suppressed. And so I look at a lot of kind of suppressed information, things that I have to dig in order to get, and things that um, I try to present things that are not being spoken of otherwise. And within this movement, this Great Awakening movement, um, I feel like a lone voice out here, um, signaling the alarm that there's going to be a big rug pull here at a certain point. It might not be for a while because it looks like the Patriot forces are going to win this overall war. Um, but I'm warning that it is going to be a Pyrrhic victory unless we do a little bit more digging. Um, Now, for the last, I guess it started maybe in, who knows when it started, sometime in the last century. Um, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. Um, this is an important thing. Uh, the precession of the equinoxes. Um, we move into and out of ages of the zodiac. Um, and ancient people have been paying attention to this going way back. Um, and we go backwards through the zodiac. So, you know, the age of Aquarius will be ending the age of Pisces. And, you know, theoretically, the age of Pisces was the age of Jesus, the fish. Now we are moving out of that. Um, so even if you do believe in Jesus, it's going to be passe. But um, you don't have any evidence on your side anyway. And that's mainly, I mean, the precession of the equinoxes is one thing, but the fact that it was really the Romans who wrote the New Testament, and they wrote it as a psychological operation against the Jews, um, is the real salient point here. But the upshot of that point, and that point can be proven over and over and over again, especially if you read Josephus, um, the historian who was writing under the auspices and under the protection of the Romans. His work, seven volume work, War of the Jews, is uh, eerily similar to the Gospels, to the point where it's rather obvious that he also wrote the Gospels. They were written by the same people at the same time for the same reason. So whoever Josephus was, he also wrote the New Testament. Now, there is one of the pioneering scholars in this field, Abelard Reuchlin, who I'm sure it's easy to dismiss as a crank. Um, but he was writing way back in the 70s, late 70s. I think he died maybe 10 years ago. And and his research methods are what you would call unorthodox, but I think thorough. He, read in Hebrew and Latin and Greek and um, probably a few other languages, and basically decoded the Roman writings uh, between each other, the Roman intellectuals, such as Pliny, Pliny the Younger, Pliny the Elder, um, Tacitus, um, Trajan, who was one of the emperors from 98 to 117, and he would look at the various writings and decode their writings. Basically, they all used a ton of different alias names, and he basically tracked down their aliases and um, then traced the Gospels to really Arius, Calpurnius, Piso, and many of the rest of uh, the books of the New Testament to other members of his family. His son Justus wrote a lot of them. His grandson Arian wrote a lot of them. Pliny the Younger wrote a lot of the Pauline epistles. Um, and Yeah, so it was, and they wrote a lot of other stuff too. It's not just the New Testament. They wrote a lot of the Old Testament, several books of the Old Testament, the book of Job, the book of Ecclesiastes, the second chunk of the book of Isaiah from, I think, from verse 39 to 66, I think. And then uh, there are a few other books. Let me see here. Um, see if I can locate that. Uh, and They also looks like they supervised the Septuagint. He basically hijacked history because he wrote a lot of things that he backdated the dates. He wrote as Aristotle, who was, writing 300, 400 years before the time period that Pisto actually lived. But according to Reuchlin, he wrote Aristotle was a small author at the time. He wrote a couple books on natural history and um, botany or something like that. But he then he filled in Aristotle's catalog um, with a bunch of his own writings that kind of historicized other things. So he would write. So that's why he wrote a lot of the New Testament stuff, is to historicize the stuff that he wrote in the New Testament. So he would write the book of Job in order to include a couple citations about prophecies about Jesus, and so uh, so the part about Jesus would look correct, and he wrote also as a number of other. He wrote as Hero of Alexandria, and he wrote as Manetho, who was I believe, Greek historian, but he wrote in the third century BC, and he's one of the main historians that documents the writing of the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, and it's called Septuagint because they had 70 or 72 um, Jewish scholars, 6 from each tribe, to go down to Alexandria, where they had the library, and put together. This was all sanctioned by, I think, one of the Ptolemies in Egypt, and um, yeah, so um, Piso, who more or less was the shadow emperor under the Flavians. In Flavian emperors were the Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian from 69 to 96 AD, and they wrote um, the main theory is that they wrote the Gospels, but it was really this guy Piso who was like the shadow emperor and his family, and they continued in their job for several generations after this. But yeah, so chapters 40 to 66 of Isaiah, Zechariah, Job, Ruth, Jonas, Daniel, First Chronicles, and Ecclesiastes. So those are the ones that are fraudulent, that are in the New Testament, and I mean in the Old Testament. And you know, the Book of Job is really considered to be one of the great works of literature. I think Piso maybe is probably one of the great authors uh, of all of history, because uh, evil as he might be, he wrote Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I think he had some help with some of the other. He wrote some of the later works as well, but he wrote his Aristotle, Nicomachus of Gerasa, treatise on mathematics, harmonics, um, and he wrote as Plutarch, and many, many, many other authors. And just the general point uh, was that I'm going way over here, but the general point is that the Romans had complete control over what was being written at this time, and nobody is writing any gospels unless it, you know, fit the approval of the Romans. And so I think that that's the main point that needs to be kept in mind. If you think that you're reading some authentic uh, documents, apply your truther, you know, your truther full control type of approach to it. They're, they had too much control to be allowing some type of gospels that they didn't approve of um, to be written and distributed within their empire. And that doesn't just hold for the gospels; it holds for all of literature, and it holds all the way down, at least until the beginning of the printing press in the 15th century. Um, and so these are facts that and reasonings that certainly the 17th letter and the boss must know, but they're not telling you this. It's kind of like um, a podcast I was watching yesterday was talking about they're treating us like children, and they probably should be treating us like children because we act like children. The way that we interact over the Epstein files, and all of a sudden somebody's on the shit list, and so then they, everybody goes against them, and we throw around the word pedophile just because somebody doubts something, or doubts a source, and we listen to some of these um, inflaming commentators out there. um, we need to have a lot better discernment, and we need to do a lot more digging. We need to be a lot less emotional about how we approach this. um, but really the main thing is the digging. We've dug into the 20th and 21st century, but we got to go back further. um, the 19th century, that's great. You know, I heard somebody talking about Marbury versus Madison. That's early 19th century. And yeah, you know, the Supreme Court took over. Um, you know, there were a million different things where, you know, the establishment of this republic has been subverted um, gradually over time to the point where we're at right now. But, uh, you know, the founding of it may be suspect also. And going back into ancient history, then we have a total whitewash. There's nothing. Okay. And so if you are, um, you know, emotionally attached to a certain religion, you better get ready to let go because you're going to get the rug pulled out from under you, and better to get it pulled out now than later. If we confront the 17th letter and the boss on this right now, they might come clean about it, and they might, um, you know, uh, they might, you know, be protecting us, you know, because they're treating us like children, or maybe they have are nefarious, and we need to figure that out one way or the other. So, you know, but if we just continue to walk around with our head in the sand about this and, you know, call people like me Satanists or, you know, of Satan or evil or something like that because we are bringing up obvious points that you guys are, um, you know, hiding from, then, you know, we're going to get all the way down the road here thinking that we've got victory, that we've won, you know, and you know, we're going to be stuck with this fake religion here that, um, you know, doesn't satisfy anybody that puts any type of scrutiny into it, especially anybody who didn't grow up with it. That's why you guys are buying into it, is because you have huge blind spots, because you have emotional connections with this. You grew up with it. you you know, everybody around you is part of it. It has There's a ton of good stuff in there, whatever. um yeah, the Romans want you to be a good citizen. The Romans want you to be honest and hardworking in general. The Romans want you to not be, you know, raising rabble. That's why Jesus is completely deferential to the Romans. The only trouble Jesus gets into is when he is overturning the tables of the money changers and castigating the Jews for selling small animals. He's taking out his aggression on the Jews, not the Romans. So, you know, the Romans want you to be a good citizen. So, you know, uh, and I would objectively say that even this poison Christianity that you're getting, it's still better than the Judaism that was in there in the first place. So, you know, the Roman Christianity, even though it's a complete psyop, it is still an improvement over, you know, the Judaism, which is like this psychopathic God that wants you to, you know, just obey, and there's absolutely no more morality in it, and so on. This is an improvement, except for the Satanism part, the Satan part, because the Satan part is totally fake too. It's created by the Romans. There's no Satan in the Old Testament. There's The word is used a handful of times, but it's referring to a human being every time. But this supernatural Manichaean Satan is a is created by Arius Piso, and um, you know, Christians will cling to that, will cling to Satan just as hard as they cling to Jesus, because it's an easy way to dismiss anybody that opposes them. So it's a bunch of lazy thinking, and that's what is going to kill this movement. Okay, this rant's over. Just remember, to like, share, subscribe, and watch your blind